crank on this little fella right here, the little windlass. And whatever caused this hemorrhage or this injury, likely going to be painful. So everyone's like, wow, when you put these tourniquets on, they really hurt. Well, yeah, that's but the point of being that this is probably going to be a little more painful than what I'm doing with the tourniquet, all right?
Chris is going to show how to properly apply a tourniquet. He's going to use Jimmy as a demonstrator. He's going to go over the finer details, get all those basics down, and then he will go over some other more modified versions of it. We are also going to work with our buddy here, Stefan. He seems to have fucked with the wrong person, and now he's bleeding out. And so I will leave it to you guys to knock that out.
Well, he'll be okay for a minute.
Yeah, for a minute.
All right. Hey, so standard tourniquet application. If you have one of these prefabricated, manufactured pieces of work here, you have your pretty thick strap here that's going to go above the wound site. Yeah, you got a wound right here. I like, as a rule of thumb, to go 2 to 3 inches above, but it's never a bad idea just to go above the joint right here. Just get it high and tight. If you have time to cut the clothes off, make it a little bit easier. If not, you may just have to throw it right over the top. I always have to have these prepped, just ready to go. You pull this out of your bag, and it's still in the plastic. You have to peel all that stuff off in a time of need. You're probably a little behind the power curve already. Okay, so yeah, I know when I carry these on kit, or I have them ready, or when I issue them out to folks, I always teach them to have them in such a way that they're ready to go when they pull them out. So let's say Jimmy has some kind of an uncontrolled hemorrhage here in his lower arm. I'm going to take a look here. Be careful not to grossly manipulate anything down here that may be fractured. Now with the tourniquet, the windlass here, turning this and tightening it is pretty important. But I'm going to tell you that getting this strap properly in place and getting it as tight as possible with the friction adapter or the other mechanical processes that are here is just as important. So once you have that in there as tight as you can, that's when you're going to start to crank on this little fella right here, the little windlass. And whatever caused this hemorrhage or this injury, likely going to be painful. So everyone's like, wow, when you put these tourniquets on, they really hurt. Well, yeah, that's but the point of being that this is probably going to be a little more painful than what I'm doing with the tourniquet, all right? So I always like to keep a look at my patient. Hey, Jimmy, how you doing, man? Does that hurt? Yeah. Okay, you're doing all right? Okay, I'm going to crank this. And when he says, okay, that kind of hurts, I may give it 1/2 or more of a turn just to be sure that it's on there tight enough. Now, these manufactured tourniquets have these fancy little attachments here where you can actually secure the windlass in place. What I like to do here is just visualize this. Take a look. Is the blood still flowing? Kind of wipe it out of the way with gloves, of course. Or if you trust Jimmy, yeah, okay, I'll just wipe this off. Great. Now what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to feel for a pulse. And I do not have a pulse on Jimmy right now. I do not have a radial pulse, which is telling me that tourniquet is doing what it's supposed to be doing. And what I would do at that point is make sure it's nice and secure, clean everything up, cover it up for sanitary purposes. And I would note either on a patient treatment card, or I just go ahead and write right here on his arm, yeah, it's about 20 after 5. So I put 5:20 TK tourniquet. And then that way, any kind of a EMS personnel that come out is going to know that, hey, this tourniquet was put on about 20 minutes ago. So from there, I'll give you a little bit of relief there. And so again, these tourniquets here are really well manufactured. There's a half a dozen really good different names out there. I won't really get into those right now. But let's just say you don't have anything like this, right? So before these were all commercially available, the thing was just to manufacture your own. Everybody has some kind of a scarf or a t-shirt or some kind of a large piece of fabric. So we'll use these improvised ones on our friend here that's had a little bit of bleeding. So I want to start out with a bandage type thing to kind of take a look at where the blood is pooling. And I'm going to go 2 to 3 inches above if I have to, or I will just find that the anatomical landmark being the the joint above. So lower leg, I go above the knee. If it was on somewhere on the femur here or on the upper leg, I would go as high and tight as I could into here. But for these purposes, I'm going to go just above our little fella's elbow right here. I will put this on here, tie it with a double knot, make sure it's nice and tight. Insert our manufacturer, our kind of like our improvised windlass. I have a piece of PVC here. You could use a wooden dowel. There was one video that I did earlier where I just grabbed the MDV and use it as a windlass. I wouldn't recommend using a knife as a part of a tourniquet, but if that's all you have, that's all you have. So put this in here. I'm going to crank this down until this, either I have relief of the blood, I see it stop bleeding, there's nothing else here, or I lose that pulse. Whether it's the radial or up higher, I can use a brachial pulse. Once I have that secured there, I'm going to take some other piece of fabric, another t-shirt, another scarf, or something like that, and I am going to simply tie this in place to stop it from slipping. Again, anytime I do any kind of a movement or any kind of a modification to the treatment, I'm always going to go back and check my treatment. So I'm going to make sure there's no blood here. He still doesn't have a pulse. Yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable. It's probably going to be painful, but anesthesiologists, surgeons, they regularly have tourniquets in place during like an operating room scenario for hours and hours and hours at a time without any tissue damage, anything that's a detriment to the patient. So from there, I'll hand them off to the next medical person, whether it's an EMS that's going to take him to the hospital or a doctor or something like that. Just remember to keep everything as clean as you can, cover up the wound, cover up the wound area. And what questions do you have, Jimmy? What do you think?
No, Mike and I have talked about before. He asked if, I know, like from a law enforcement perspective, if we get in a shooting, we're expected to render medical aid, as soon as practical or as soon as possible for that person. And a self-defense scenario, I don't think you have that same obligation. I mean, it's an option if you do have the training, to come back and try helping, but you're also running the secondary risk of him deciding to attack you again, and now you got to fight through that situation. For law enforcement, generally, we're going to have a group of guys there. We'll be able to handcuff them, get control of them, and then start our medical procedures on them. I would say in a one-on-one self-defense situation, I probably wouldn't. I would just try to create some distance and call 911, try to get medical personnel there as quick as I could.
Right. So hypothetical scenario, I get into some kind of an altercation and I'm like, stab. I get away.
Right.
I don't leave the scene of an altercation,
Right.
but I'm going to get away for my safety, for my family's safety if they're with me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to immediately call 911 and say,
Right.
hey, I think
Right.
someone just tried to hurt me. I reacted.
Right.
So, and then the police are going to show up and do their thing.
Yeah.
But
So
I wouldn't just go home and call them from my
Right.
house. I'd try to stay close by.
Yeah, try to stay close by. If you need to leave the parking lot or, the immediate area just because of
safety.
Yeah, for safety,
sure.
then you can move, but you're on the phone letting them know where you're going to be, and you're easy to contact.
Yeah, first rule for EMS personnel is scene safety.
Right.
Right. So it's kind of like that in reverse.
Right.
Okay. Again, so with the tourniquets, I like to have these ready to go, not only for application to your buddy, but if you have to do a self-application. So normally what I will do is I will open this up to about the size that I would need to go around my skinny leg, right? Or a buddy, or a bigger fella, a bigger person, right? So I have this ready to go. But let's say self-application. I'll have this somewhere close by. I don't regularly carry this when I'm just shopping at Walmart, but there is a consideration to have these life-saving tools as well as the skills to apply them close by. So again, just take this, wrap it around as tight as I can, as best that I can, the whole time when you're losing that valuable blood coming out, right? Okay, again, get this strap down here. Again, to reemphasize, the strappy part of the tourniquet is very important, but the windlass itself is kind of secondary to that, because once you get this down as tight as you can, the less you're going to have to use to to apply with that windlass. Like, this is really tight. If I turn this any further, we're going to have, it's going to be painful. And I'm hurting myself, right? So at that point, what I like to do is just come down here and check Mr. Radial pulse just above your thumb here. And I do not have a pulse at this time. You want to check that out for me, Jimmy? Yeah. You're going to check like your cap refill, do this kind of thing. And you'll probably notice a little bit of a coloration change there. That's a pretty effective tourniquet. And yeah, it's uncomfortable. If it was still bleeding, I would crank it even more to stop any hemorrhage or any bleeding that is evident, right? And again, yeah, it's uncomfortable. It's a little painful, but you can bleed out really fast depending on how severe a wound is, whether it's from an edged weapon, a gunshot, or any kind of other trauma. Again, nice and tight. And once this is in place, do not take it off. Let a higher medical authority take care of that, whether it's EMS, whether it's the doctor. There are some training aspects where we do, once we have established a hemorrhage control, put a pressure dressing on, some kind of a hemostatic agent, and then I would go ahead and potentially take a look at this, loosen it ever so slightly, keep an eye on that pulse, keep an eye on the wound and the bleeding. And then once you can relieve it, or once you can take the tourniquet off, again, this is like, that's like a higher level. That's like special training. Not everybody should be doing this. And if you're sitting on somebody for long enough to where this tourniquet is on a really, really long period of time, think a backwoods country scenario where you're out there hiking with some friends, maybe a hunting trip where you're really, really far back there away from EMS, no phone signal. You may be in a situation where this is a consideration, okay? But if I were to loosen this in any situation, I would keep it in place. That way, all I have to do is just reapply it. Crank it down. And there we go. Hemorrhage control once again. And yeah, that is really uncomfortable. So there we go. And let it go back in here. And yeah, and just practice. This is one of those things that you can regularly drill with, and use your improvised tourniquet with household materials, and yeah, see where you can go from there. If you have any questions, let's direct those to Mr. Don Vito here at the Elite U.
Hey, that's all great information. All kidding aside, the understanding of how to do this and to have a tourniquet nearby, or the understanding of how to improvise one, is obviously a life-saving skill. There are those that state that you should have a tourniquet on you regardless, along with your pistol and your knife and all this other stuff. Thing is that if it is appropriate and it is you're able to do that, then obviously carry one on you. As a cheat, I usually have one close by, so in my truck I have a few. I threw one into my wife's purse so that she has one directly there, so if I ever have to actually access that, just because of the amount of stuff I'm normally carrying, sometimes it's not the most comfortable thing to be carrying. And so that's a personal decision. Obviously, if I would need it at a time and I don't have it, then that would be something that I would have to work on. And so look for Chris to be on the Elite U. We have an Elite People interview for him, and he's going to be doing a number of classes as far as how he does certain things, his go bag and whatnot. He's a retired AFSOC PJ, and in turn has a lot of skill to pass on for that. But is there any consideration for maybe less or lower profile type tourniquets? So those things even though they're smaller, they tend to be,
right.
So
yeah, I would say anytime you're carrying something that can cause a wound that would necessitate a tourniquet, you should probably carry a tourniquet, whether it's a firearm, whether that's some kind of an edged weapon. So that kind of contradicts with what I was trying to explain earlier. So there are a number of different tourniquets out there. You have the earlier plastic models with the plastic windlass here. This one's metal, so it's really, really tough. The big considerations when you're looking at the tourniquets is really the function. the wider the strap, the more comfortable and the less likely it's going to cause some kind of damage to the affected person. They make a oh, you have the rat. So there's a couple of different commercially available tourniquets. Like I said, you have the ones with the metal windlass here. You have another variation with a plastic, but this is nice and thick in the middle. This is probably like Gen 4 or 5 of the Cat. I'm not even sure which. But these early on, we were getting these into colder environments and we were breaking them. So these are now relatively well constructed. I prefer the metal windlass. That's just kind of like my go-to. They make another variation here that's just basically an elastic strap here. Now these have mixed reviews. I have had success on these with live patient models. Really, it's just getting it tightened down there and wrapping this little thing as tight as you can around the appendage, and that's just like 2 wraps with that, and it's that this thing is really uncomfortable, and I think that has to do with the width of the strap here. Again, you do what you can to secure this thing and keep it in there and as tight as you can. And yeah, that's definitely going to cause some hemorrhage control. I mean, that's so tight right now that it's causing my causing my fingers to bend. But there's a couple other different ones out there. They have a little tiny ratchet strap that you can put on and crank down, like the cargo strap in a car or something like that, or like a cargo bed. Again, just get your hands on these, practice with them, train with them. I mean, you should be familiar with your kid if you're going to carry this in a life-saving situation or something that you're going to depend on for either yourself, your buddies, or your family. Definitely know how to use it. Take it out, get it dirty, and if you find something that you like, stick with it. I stick with the metal windlass having tourniquets, whether it's a Softy or one of the other brands. But yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. I mean, I know guys that are still they still use the improvised ones, like I put on our buddy here,
Stefan.
Mr. Stefan. Yes, sir. All right.
Well, brother, that was great information. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, absolutely.
Hope you guys enjoyed that. We'll move on to the next video right after this. Welcome to the MDV +1 VTC.